Can you explain to me why someone can die after having contracted coronavirus?
What we know is that primarily the coronavirus causes respiratory failure. So when it spreads to the lungs, it causes what we call a pneumonitis, where the lungs become very wet and waterlogged inside. So the normal mechanisms that keep fluid in the blood break down. So the little membranes and tissues in the bases of the lungs become porous, and that allows fluid to leak in from the circulation into the lungs, almost like drowning. One of the things we provide with the ventilators is we can provide pressure which pushes some of that fluid out and helps to keep the lungs open. So one of the mechanisms that people become exhausted is because the work of breathing is so great that they basically become exhausted and die. So if you imagine your lungs are normally like a nice light sponge, light and easy to move. If you've ever pulled a sponge out of a bucket of water, you know how heavy and wet a sponge can become. It's exactly the same thing. If your lungs are absolutely sodden, then it's very, very difficult to breathe. And what happens over time is people's oxygen levels fall, the levels of carbon dioxide, which is a gas you normally breathe out, rise in the blood. That makes you even more drowsy. It has a narcotic effect. And then people will slowly develop worsening respiratory failure, and eventually they'll become unconscious and their breathing will get more shallow and they will die. So that's what would happen if you were left alone. Thankfully, we can intervene with a ventilator and prevent that from happening. But the deaths vary from multi-organ failure, which is basically a progressive shutdown of all the different organs, including your kidneys, your circulation, failure of your liver, as well as your lungs. So we've seen that. But we also see patients who develop a thing called a myocarditis lately. Often when they're starting to recover, the heart can become very adversely affected by the virus, and they develop heart failure. And that's been probably the leading cause of death in the COVID patients that we've seen.